Hello, I'm Samantha Ruckenstein from McGill University, and today I will be presenting The Representation of the Other in Rosa Montero's Tears in Rain. Before I begin, I would like to thank the Third Global Conference of University Researchers on Issues of the Hispanic World's team for inviting me to speak today. In this presentation, I demonstrate how marginalized bodies are represented in Rosa Montero's novel Tears in Rain. The novel, published in Spain in 2012, follows replicant Bruna Husky, an undercover detective in the year 2109, through her investigation of sudden techno-human deaths and violent attacks. In the text, replicants are cyborg technobodies created by humans on the United States of Earth who during their history were engaged in dangerous events under human control. With the focus of representation of marginalized bodies, Tears in Rain generates multiple discourses that create a mimetic effect between the futuristic society of the novel and today's unstable global climate, connecting historical and current discourses on alterity and oppression. Taking into account the reproduction of marginalization, this essay will look at marginalized bodies in light of three systems of oppression: discursive racism, gendered and sexual oppression, and the environmental privilege. As theoretical guide to the project, I will apply theories by Donna Haraway, Gary Spivak, Paul B. Preciado, and Catriona Sandilands. Finally, the objectives of my project are to critically analyze the marginalization seen in Tears in Rain and identify ways that the three systems of oppression manifest. This project will help fill the current gap in the literature, as there are few academic works based on this novel, as well as help guide a conversation on existing marginalization of other bodies. In the first section, I center my focus on discursive racialization that appears in the text. Montero creates a racist discourse in her novel as a mimetic critique of systems of oppression, creating a hierarchy between the humans, techno-humans, and aliens. To create an ideology of separation, these dialogues are charged with hate to ensure that the other is oppressed. First, I would like to highlight the ever-present racialization of the techno-human bodies presented in the novel. The division is highlighted by a dominating anthropocentric notion where the human characters are the dominant and the technobodies are the marginalized group. According to Haraway, a cyborg is, quote, a cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine and organism, a creature of social reality as well as a creature of fiction, end quote. The techno-humans created in Montero's text therefore mimic the cyborg structure presented in Haraway's theory. Additionally, Haraway notes that, quote, the cyborg replication is uncoupled from organic reproduction, end quote. The text consequently presents reproduction as a form of oppression of the cyborgs. In conjunction to the inability to reproduce, their eyes are indicators of their android bodies. She notes, quote, the feline eyes were nothing more than a segregationist trick to make reps more easily recognizable, end quote. Here the cyborg is a negative representation of the post-human existence in the world. In Gary Spivak's article, Can the Subaltern Speak?, she expresses that the subaltern cannot speak. From their position of oppression, the voice of the other is never heard, furthering their position of marginalization. The manipulation of alterity produced in the novel is emphasized by the historical representation of the techno-humans in the archive. The technobodies, according to the text, were slave laborers with no rights who by 2057 were created to fulfill one of four purposes: mining, computation, combat, and pleasure. The enslavement of the other portrays racist structures within the archival memory, as it provides a historical link to slavery of oppressed peoples. The manipulation of the collective memory is targeted in the novel to execute racist discourse, as seen through the rewritings of the archive. Anne Walsh observes, the lesson is clear. History, the memory of society and of culture, can be and is consequently rewritten. Quote, oppressive terms are used to further dominancy. The archive observes that the term techno-human or techno are acceptable, whereas replicant and replica, a term for androids supporting humans, are offensive. Distinguishing appropriate and inappropriate terminology provides an important discussion on dominancy through racist language. To continue, racism enters into the institution of politics in the novel through two parties, the Radical Replicant Movement, RRM, and the Human Supremacist Party, HSP. The RRM is used to represent and fight for the existence of techno-human rights and inclusion in society, giving a voice to the other. The RRM reclaim the term replicant in their name as a banner of their own identity. The HSP serves as the radical opposition to techno-human existence. Their name alone indicates their belief that humans are the supreme race. The use of the controversial political party in the novel aids in mirroring extremism seen in today's political climate. In addition to techno-humans, aliens are also marginalized. Bruna comments, quote, Ollie never turned her nose up to anyone. Techno, alien, usually referred to as bicho or mutant, end quote. The term bicho, meaning bug or pest, is repeated throughout the novel, with the centering use to other the aliens. The two main alien characters are Bartolo and Mayo, one a pet while the other a person. For example, in the novel, Bruno finds a hurt Bartolo. Quote, "The bicho had blood on its arm, maybe from a cut from a piece of broken glass. The blood was red and shiny, like human and rep blood." End quote. Here we see that Bruno uses the term bicho when referencing the animal, as well as compares it first to human and then to herself, making the human the focal point or norm. Regenerationism observes, quote, "From the anthropocentrist perspective, non-human animals are inherently inferior, and when they appear in literary works, they tend to be depicted in human terms, when they are not completely ignored." The anthropocentric perspective consequently acts as a vehicle to othering the alien characters. Furthermore, Bruno internalized, quote, "She had slept with a bicho. She felt like throwing up. But had she really slept with a bicho?" End quote. Bruno's disgust for her sexual partner Mayo emphasizes the othering that occurs towards the aliens. Not only is there a hierarchy between the races, but also within the different alien groups. For example, Bruno realizes that Mayo is no ma, quote, "the most numerous others on Earth," end quote. Therefore, he is othered by definition. To conclude, Montero produces examples of marginalization to both the techno and alien bodies. The racist discourses surrounding the oppressed peoples is present in both the archival memory as well as through the derogatory terms. In conclusion, the racist discourse presented in Tears and Rain demonstrates the marginalization of bodies in the novel. The following section reflects on gender and sexuality and how they lead to the reproduction of marginalization in the novel. To begin, Paul B. Preciado's text, Texto Junkie, aids in the conceptualization of gender and sexuality represented in Montero's novel. For Preciado, pharmacopornographic refers to, quote, "the process of biomolecular, pharmaco, and semiotic, technical, pornographic, government of sexual objectivity, which the pill and Playboy are two paradigmatic offspring." Throughout Preciado's theory, he focuses on the concept of production, be it through the production of pornography, technology, drugs, hormones, gender identities, or reproduction, therefore highlighting the reproduction that Montero displays in her novel. While Montero looks at technobodies, Preciado's focus on biotechnobodies, bodies affected by the pharmacopornographic industry. Preciado's cyborg is instead a technology produced by chemicals, drugs, surgeries, and hormones that are used to convert a body into biotechnical body. In sum, Preciado's approach to gender and sexuality will guide my analysis of marginalization caused by the reproduction of gendered and sexually oppressed bodies. First, the question of gender is vital to the novel as Montero highlights inequality. The discourse around body affects how society views gender and physical attributes of the body. This is highlighted by Kay Mitchell when she notes, quote, "The body is, to a significant extent, a product of our understanding of it, a product of our thinking of body and matter, a product of discourse," end quote. Although Bruno is the protagonist, there are only 3 main characters who identify as female, whereas there are 5 leading males. Furthermore, the 3 female characters, Bruno, Chia, and Nabokov, are all techno-humans. Of the 5 main male roles, Lizard, Nepal, Yanis, Habib, and Mayo, all but Mayo are human. This dispersion of bodies shows that for the most part, in Tears and Rain, the men are human and the women are machines, further differentiating between the sexes. According to Laura Mulvey, quote, "The image of woman has become conventionally accepted as very often meaning something other than herself," end quote. Thus, the female body is marginalized in the novel due to the image that she represents as the other. Mulvey states that the woman is artificial, made up, cosmetic, meaning that she is manufactured instead of having a true identity. Therefore, by casting the 3 female leads as cyborgs, Montero highlights the othering that is placed onto the woman's body. Next, Bruno leads as a crucial example of Montero's critique of marginalization of bodies presented through gender and sexual stereotypes. In the pharmacopornographic perspective, her body is criticized from the beginning because she is a combat rep, therefore having masculine features. Montero also blurs heteronormative discourse in her novel through Bruno's sexuality. Montero writes, "Like most humans and techno-humans, Bruno was more or less bisexual," end quote. Veronica Hollinger observes, quote, "The techno-body as replicated body points to us towards the utopian space of queer excess. Perhaps all techno-bodies are, at least potentially, queer bodies." Her theory therefore plays with the concept of reproduction versus replication. To continue the discussion of sexuality, Montero presents the lesbian relationship between she and Nabokov in order to be inclusive of marginalized couples that are often not represented in literature. However, while the couple is included, the novel focuses on their bodies, sexualizing them to male beauty standards, and on the fact that they are lovers. The only real privacy or intimacy seen in their relationship is through the decoration in their apartment. In conclusion, this section I investigated the ways in which gender and sexuality are represented as a way to critique the marginalized bodies in the text, as both are utilized in the novel to reproduce marginalization of othered bodies. Ultimately, the marginalization of bodies in Tears and Rain is visible through the lack of environmental privilege in lower-class communities. Brent Ryan Bellamy observes, quote, "Science fiction, ever a tool of imagining the impossible, has long offered us the chance to imagine retroactive futurities. If we begin to behave differently now, how might this change affect the future of the Earth system?" End quote. Therefore, Montero's use of genre can be attributed to science fiction's ability to present a reproduction of global issues and foreshadow future consequences. Indeed, the climate crisis is mentioned in the archive, accentuating both the necessity for its inclusion in the collective memory, as well as highlight the consequences that the crisis poses. The archive states that in the mid-2070s, nations imposed a charge for clean air, which became known as Regenerationism or Aristopopulism. Due to these taxes, people who were unable to afford the fees for clean air were forced to immigrate to zones that were more polluted. Thus, impoverished people were forced into worse living conditions due to the taxes that affected their rights to breathable air, provoking marginalization due to their inability to access resources. According to Sandilands, queer ecology looks not only at the power relations by which nature is organized, that of gender and racism, but more specifically looks at their sexuality. For example, she notes that parks were created based on a gendered and racialized view of nature, that in addition to imposing its views onto peoples, it also imposes its ideals onto nature itself. In general, she observes how rural spaces were seen as natural, whereas urban spaces were seen as artificial and therefore a place of corruption. This idea of corruption is visible in Montero's text through unequal access to resources that exist within the metropolitan society. In the novel, Montero identifies the clean air zones as lung parks, zones filled with artificial trees to provide breathable air. According to Sandilands, there was a, quote, "push for natural spaces to be included within urban spaces. Therefore, urban city parks were created to promote moral regulation within nature's confines." End quote. This lung park, a natural space placed within the urban setting of the futuristic Madrid, serves this function. The parks are owned and operated by large companies such as Texaco Repsol, furthering injustice as a large company controls the rights to air. Sands notes that, quote, "pollution is a central component in the settings of the novel, not only as an environmental problem, but also as an indicator of the socioeconomic level of the protagonists." To elaborate, in the novel, breathable air is transformed into a commodity that only the privileged can access. In the text, polluted air causes wrinkles to the skin, and many fortunate people pay for therapies to counteract the effects. However, Bruna notes that the therapies, often chosen as a cheaper option than clean air, were only accessible if people could afford them. This demonstration of poverty proves that the inability to access resources affects the impoverished at every level, including their skin. The poverty is also emphasized through the role of moths, people who try to escape their socioeconomic condition in the contaminated zones in order to breathe clean air. Unfortunately, these people are seen as illegal immigrants and were targeted by the police. Thus, the marginalization of the poor is reproduced in the novel to underscore societal injustice. To conclude, Montero criticizes socioeconomic injustice that exists due to the inability to access resources. Using science fiction as a tool, Montero displays how the environmental crisis will continue to affect the inhabitants of Earth. Thus, Montero reproduces injustice through the marginalization of bodies due to environmental privilege. In sum, this essay demonstrates the ways in which Rosa Montero critiques society through her reproduction of marginalized bodies in Tears of Rain. The futuristic society in the novel functions as a mimetic device to represent the presence of alterity. According to Haraway, quote, "Gender, race, or class consciousness is an achievement forced on us by the terrible historical experience of the contradictory societal realities of patriarchy, colonialism, and capitalism." End quote. While the novel produces futuristic versions of marginalization, it mirrors both historical and current discourses of oppression of the other. For future researchers, this analysis can help lead to better understanding of the presence of discursive racism, gender and sexual oppression, and environmental privilege, both in literature and in today's global climate. Thank you.